CEO of the Real Truth Inc. I'm your host. Wow, it's been a roller coaster for the last week. We had the Macy Music Effects here Friday and Saturday. That was very entertaining. I was down there. It's been so much I've been covering. We not only just covered the fest, we also covered the World Championship Boxing, Adrian Bronner. We covered that. Then we came back to cover the Macy Music Fest. And I have so much to put out, but right now I'm gonna get right into my program because I have one of the legendaries, the icon, sitting here with me today. And I want to also, before I go into the program, the broadcast, is give State Representative Dale Mallory a shout out for making this happen. But I have the icon here. And everybody knows because I eat so much of their pizza, but but on top of that, it's so much legacy there with Buddy LaRosa. I have him and Executive Director Art Newman here with me today in the studio. It's just so exciting for me to continue to do these programs, to continue to be a motivation, and also to bring you information of contact and the information of education, because that's what we're about. It's just about information and education. So I wanted to, I guess, when I go to my guests and go back into the boxing history, because there's a lot of this history of boxing that people need to know out into the community on, what Buddy LaRosa really stands for. How did he get his start? Something about his background. This is what we want to bring to the table. Not about so much on all the accomplishments, but I was just talking to him. He just told me, you have to go through something to get to the places where we are today. So I would like to welcome Buddy LaRosa, and I would like to welcome Art Newman to the broadcast. How y'all doing?
Fine, thank you, Rufus.
Oh, appreciate it. I appreciate
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Art.
Good to be
Mr.
here.
Buddy, just tell the audience on how did you get your start? What was your vision for you as a kid on, when you're going back to, I think I read something to 1954 when something, I think.
Well, that was my business career.
That was your business career. Okay, we're going to keep it business. That'll be another show.
Okay.
We're going to focus on the boxers since y'all about all the boxers because I have
I've
so
been talking about during the Big Depression in the 30s, 35, 36.
Okay.
Well, I was born in 1929.
Okay.
And I grew up down in, they call it the Banks today. But back in those days, when I was a kid, they called it the Bottoms.
The bottom.
And that was at the bottom of the barrel, believe me.
Okay, so you grew up here in Cincinnati?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And what was some of the things that motivated you? What was your vision? How did you look at the world at that time, growing up? Living from the 1930s and we into 2012. What was your vision? What was the things?
Well, my only vision was was fortunate to have a mother and a father at home, and my dad was a truck driver, and we lived down in the bottoms because that's where all the railroad cars came in and all the produce came in to this market. All the fruits and vegetables. And then he was a truck driver and hauled that produce to the various commission houses who sold it to grocery stores and restaurants and everything else. So that was what job he had. But then he also boxed on the side to supplement his income.
Okay, so your father was a boxer.
Yes, he was a boxer.
So that's how you got into the boxing.
That's how I first got interested in boxing. And then too, if you didn't box down there on the bottoms, you better run like heck.
Okay, so on the bottoms, is this like over the Rhine? What part of the town you live in? What area, when you say the bottoms, was it like over the Rhine, west
No,
end?
it was down at Pearl and Sycamore.
Okay, so
down
that's downtown?
At the bottom, yes, at the bottom of Pearl Street. And most of the folks from the Mediterranean resided in there. Folks from the Middle East, the Syrians, the Lebanese, a lot of Greeks. And there were a lot of small little grocery stores that were ethnic grocery stores. Mm-hmm. And it was a beautiful upbringing. It was a rich cultural experience, just almost like growing up over in another world with the foods that you ate. You learned about the Lebanese food, you learned about the Greek food, and it was a rich cultural experience. But you better know how to fight though, because at an early age, if you didn't handle yourself, you better be quick on your feet. So
was you a boxer yourself?
Yes, sir. We boxed. Everybody boxed in those days. boxing was big. When we had a Golden Glove tournament, I boxed out of the Fenwick Club, which is naturally no longer here. It was up on Commercial Square, and it's right where P&G headquarters sits today. And the Fenwick Club was a lot like the YMCA. They had an indoor pool, they had kid programs, they had facilities for young men. It wasn't for women though, it was an all-male institution. It was run by the Catholic Church because I'm Catholic, and it was like the Y, only it was for Catholics. And then we competed against the Y, but back in those days, believe it or not, but the YMCA's were segregated. My friends that went to the YMCA up on 9th Street, that was for black folks. And then the other folks had the other YMCA up on Central Parkway. But the YMCA on 9th Street, they kicked everybody's butt.
Okay. Okay.
And they were still some of my dearest friends, and I knew when we had a fight against them, I better be in shape.
Oh, did you grow up with a big family, small family? How many brothers and sisters you had?
We had in our extended family, because we all kind of lived together, there was 10 in the whole extended family. But in my immediate family, it was just me, my mom and dad, and my sister. But back in those days, we were in a 6-story building, and we had the whole family in one whole building.
Also,
and guess who owned the building?
Who?
Art Newman.
Art Newman.
Not really, but most of the Jewish businessmen owned a lot of those buildings.
Back in them days.
Back in those days, and just happened the way it worked out. And they would collect the rent every week.
Okay, so how did you and Art meet?
Through boxing.
Oh, so you was a boxer too?
Well,
As a teenager, I'm from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And as a teenager, even before that, being Jewish, and during World War II, you weren't too well liked because the kids of Polish and German extract, they didn't like you too much here. So I used to get my butt kicked every day. And my father had a friend who was a pro, and he gave me some boxing lessons. And I beat the school bully one day in recess, and nobody messed with me after that. And I did box for the YM and WHA in Pittsburgh, which is the Young Men and Women's Hebrew Association, and didn't do too much there, but I did box for them. And I met Buddy. I managed a young man named Frank Rhodes, and he won the USBA super middleweight title. And Buddy and I became close friends.
So have y'all ever sparred against each other?
Yeah. Verbally.
Okay, you say verbally, but I mean, so y'all know y'all trained together and different things in that order.
Yeah. Well, we met at the Entrepreneur of the Year one time. That's where we really became close.
And we weren't too friendly up until that. We were adversarial.
Yeah.
You know, he got a fighter, my fighter going to fight his fighter. I mean, you're friends, but you're cool, but you're not really tight. Because I'm going to try to kick your butt, and he's going to try to kick my butt, but we cool. Then after the fight, we still were cool.
So y'all just rock and rumble.
That's it. You got it. Rock and rumble.
Just rock and rumble. Wow, I can imagine them days. So how did you get started into creating your own boxing club and things in that order?
Well, boxing has always been like an extended family. I didn't tell you the rest of my story, but my mother and father got divorced when I was about 10, 12 years old. And well, you got to understand, back in those days, being a boxer and then working and traveling and coming back. And
was you in the Navy at that time?
No, I still was a little kid.
Oh, you still okay? You going back to the kid?
We're still in the 30s.
Okay, we in the 30s.
40, man.
Whoa,
but then when he got into some union activity, they had no union back in those days, and then he started to help organize Local 100, which is a local Teamsters organization, and it's still in effect. And he was one of the early founders of it. But they always had a couple tough guys when they organized because management would run them off the property. And they usually used to get some guys that had some boxing ability or had a reputation. But you couldn't legally use your fists because they were weapons in the eyes of the law. It's like having a club in your hand. So whenever some of the employees or whoever the management hired to run the union organizers off their property you'd have to take a stand and you'd have to protect yourself. Well, it's all the organizers had with their hands. The other guys had clubs. But
Okay.
then the organizers would get thrown in jail. So the old man got, arrested a few times. And my mother's father didn't like that activity. And after a while, they just agreed to separate, and they separated. And then I moved over into Fairmount, and I left the waterfront, so to speak, a riverfront. Then I got experience over in the suburb, and it wasn't much different. All the neighbors over there were more Italian than anything. But there again, I'm a new guy coming into the block, so you had to establish yourself all over again. But it wasn't too difficult. And then my mother's folks were over there, and they had a nice big family, and we lived with them. But it's an extended family. Boxing is just like that. The gym's there, the doors are there, you got your bags in there. Next thing you know, these little kids come in, they start hanging around. Next thing you know, they're punching on a bag. So I opened up that gym down there on Plum Street, right across the street from City Hall. That was my first gym. And we called it then the Queen City Gym. And I thought, well, I want to have some kids experience what I experienced going into a gym and belonging to a group where we all were trying to become better at something, and it happened to be boxing. And if you're better, it gives you more confidence, you learn discipline, self-control, and all the other good qualities. And I did it mainly as an effort to establish something positive in an inner city where there isn't too much for kids to do, because I was one of those kids at one time.
But you also was fighting and training at that time when you opened up this gym?
No. I was already, when I opened up that gym, I was already in business, and I had the funds to open up that gym.
Okay.
But when I was fighting, working out in the gym and everything, I was a student in grade school, and then when I was a student in high school, I used to work out with one of the local pros who went to the same school I did at Roger Bacon. His name was Pat Iacobucci. And Pat was already a pro at 16, and I thought he was going to teach me a lot. He did. He taught me to get out of boxing.
Oh, he was that bad, huh?
Oh, he was. And he was a contender. He fought Willie Pep. He must have had 100 fights. And back in those days, they only had one organization, the IBF, Federation Boxing, I believe it was. And you really had to be good to be a champion or be well connected, one or the other. And Pat went into, he was a professional pipe cover, and he worked at P&G's. And we were close. Matter of fact, he just passed about a week ago.
Okay.
And he was 83 years old. But was a great influence on my life in boxing. He was a real champion in the ring and outside of the ring. But that's why we're related, because of the sport of boxing. Art and I are related because of boxing. All the kids that came through the programs, or whoever they're associated, it's one big alumni. And as we grow older, we keep connected.
So what now, we talking about the 30s, okay? So we're gonna fast forward a little bit. What's the next era from that point, buddy?
The 30s?
From
the 30s, I'm in grade school, and then I go to high school in the 40s at Roger Bacon, and then I stopped boxing then and started playing football and doing other things, and then working after school and riding streetcars because we didn't have buses or cars.